Good morning, everyone, and welcome to all of you to our debate on the EU industrial policy for digital leadership. Today's debate is hosted by MEP Pilar del Castillo, who is the chair of the EIF steering committee and a member of the ITRE committee. She's also co-chair of the Artificial Intelligence and Digital Intergroup and member of the Special Committee on AI in a Digital Age of the European Parliament. Welcome, Pilar, and thanks for taking the lead on this important debate with us. As you may know, as a consequence of the COVID crisis, the European Commission President has announced in her 2020 State of the Union speech an update of the EU industrial strategy in the first half of 2021, with a Commission proposal expected to be launched in mid-March. At the same time, a considerable investment package in the Next Generation EU and the Recovery and Resilience Facility have been agreed upon in addition to the European Multi-Annual Financial Framework, and 20% of this package has been earmarked for digital investments. This could be indeed be a game changer for a new industrial strategy. Today, we will bring together 4 experts to discuss how investments into digital under a renewed industrial strategy can act as the best medicine to relaunch and transform the European economy. Let's give them all a warm welcome, starting with Maria Teresa Fabregas Fernandez, Director of the Recovery and Resilience Task Force at the European Commission. Welcome. And then we will be joined by Christoph Steck, Director of Public Policy and Internet at Telefonica. Good to see you, Christoph. Alain Dedieu, President of Water Waste Water Segment at Schneider-Electric and Chair of Digital Europe's Digital Manufacturing Executive Council. Good morning, Alain. And last but not least, let's welcome Dr. Vera Demary, Head of the Competence Area Digitalization, Structural Change and Competition at the German Institute for Economic Research. Thank you all very much for joining us today. As always, after listening to our speakers, there will be an exchange of views with our audience. We will take you to the Q&A session later. But now, with no further ado, I'll leave the floor to Pilar del Castillo.
Thank you very much, Maria Rosa. Dear colleagues and EIF members, thank you really to you all for being with us today to a debate on how investments into digital can contribute to relaunch and transform the European industry. On March 2020, the European Commission presented the communication, A New Industrial Strategy for Europe. Since then, the COVID-19 crisis has dramatically changed the status quo, to the extent that the Commission will update the EU's industrial strategy in the first half of 2021. What is really a very good news, is very welcome initiative since the situation has deeply changed. We now have a considerable investment package with the Next Generation EU and the Recovery and Resilience Facility, worth 7,500 billion euros, and budget that comes in addition to the ordinary European multi-annual financial framework. The need to invest in digital is no doubt urgent. Indeed, the recovery plan has earmarked 20% of its budget for investment into digital and, in addition, identified Industry 4.0 as a crucial area for our competitiveness where action needs to be taken. Today's discussion will contribute, as I am absolutely sure, to our ongoing debate in Parliament on how can best utilize the funds through digitalization of industry. More specifically, I think it's important to shed some light on how to improve resilience and of its value chains, on the one hand, face the dependency of critical technological resources from third countries, on the other hand, or contribute to end with the lack of digital maturity of the SMEs. These are only, of course, some questions, but for sure there are many more. And on the other hand, this is a very timetable debate. I want to underline. We, in addition, have, as you know, we have in the table related files such as the Data Governance Draft Regulation or initiatives such as the European Cloud Alliance. For all that, we have a very good lineup of speakers, which I would like to thank very much for being here this morning with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pilar, for setting the scene for today's debate and touching upon some ongoing initiatives, as you mentioned, the cloud and the data governance, and of course, stressing the importance of digital maturity and resilience in Europe. But let's bring in the European Commission with our Maria Teresa Fabregas Fernandez and perhaps hear more about the available funds. Over to you, please.
Thank you. Good morning to you all. Thank you for the invitation. And my 5 minutes of introductory remarks will follow very well what the member of the European Parliament, Pilar del Castillo, has been mentioning. So I will try to highlight the potential of the Recovery and Resilience Facility to shape and accelerate the digital transition in Europe. So it's clear that the pandemic has highlighted the importance of digital as never before. Businesses, public service, education, healthcare, cultural and creative activities and communications depend on connectivity and digital assets to continue functioning. The same goes for industry. So this trend is to stay. And that's one of the goals, as the member of the European Parliament was mentioning, of the overall European Commission project. So the crisis has also tested and revealed in a way our strengths, the European strengths, and shortcomings, weaknesses in the field of the digital area. The Recovery and Resilience Facility is an unprecedented opportunity for a fundamental reboot of our economy and society. So if we get it right, if the member states get it right in their Recovery and Resilience Plan, and they push for courageous and ambitious initiatives, we can really move towards this digital transition and achieve the goal. And which should be the priorities, also what we are seeing in our discussions with the member states. So a first priority is to support digital skills at all levels to ensure that everyone can participate in society and take advantage of the digital transition. So some of the initiatives that we are seeing in the draft Recovery and Resilience plans relate to reskilling schemes for job seekers, voucher systems to support small and micro enterprises to take up digital solutions, rollout of comprehensive digital educational plans, or modernization of education and labor market policies to address the major skills mismatches and increase demand for advanced ICT professionals. Second key priority relates to making the public sector fit for the future. And this goes beyond the digitalization of public administrations. What is necessary is also to accelerate the reforms that will help digitalizing, for instance, the justice system. The same goes for healthcare. We see efforts in terms of investing in telehealth solutions or in developing secure electronic health records and reforms to lay the ground for interoperable health data spaces. So the use of data analytics and artificial intelligence is key. Third key area is to make a universal and affordable access to very high capacity networks. So it's necessary any efforts to shape the digital transition without this improved connectivity would not be successful. So in this area, we see that in the plans of the member states, there are large-scale investments into fiber and 5G networks in order to bridge the urban-rural divide and attract investments. Also, member states include, in their draft plans, are considering to include strategic support to help modernizing key industrial sectors, in particular considering SMEs, but all type of investment sectors. It's clear that member states are also considering some multi-country projects in the field of digital. And for instance, one of the areas they are looking at is the 5G network coverage along the main transport networks, no? In order to encourage the development and coordination of automated transport within the European Union. All member states need to progress in building up their digital capacity. This is crucial for the competitiveness of the European industry and the European Union, and also for the autonomy of Europe. It's clear that investments on cybersecurity, on access to data and cloud are also essential for European industry in order to benefit from the European the new digital economy. Investments on data-driven innovation projects are crucial. And what is also very important is investments and reforms related to the reinforcing synergies between the green and digital transition. So a successful rollout of the Recovery and Resilience Facility does not depend on a good plan alone. It is clear, as the member of the European Parliament mentioned, that there is the 20% target for each of the plans in terms of digital investments. But what we need to make sure is that all the proposed investments and reforms are good enough, high quality, in order to ensure a lasting impact of the digital transition, to ensure the resilience that Madame del Castillo was highlighting. Therefore, reforms and investments work hand in hand. And what is very important, something that we are requesting to member states, is to remove also bottlenecks to investments, all types of investments, but here when we're talking about industry, it's very important. So we are working closely with the member states in order to help them to provide the good quality investments and reforms. And also we'll be publishing, in accordance with the regulation, a dedicated scoreboard to help display the progress across the 6 priority pillars of the Recovery and Resilience Facility, including, of course, the digital transition. So this will be done before the end of the year. What is clear also is that we talk about national plans, but there is a European dimension in all these plans. And this comes on the one hand from the common challenges to which all member states are confronted to, which require in many cases coordinated reforms and investments. Here, the European Commission highlighted last September already some flagship areas, 7 flagship areas, some of them very much related to the digital transition, on which member states are considering to introduce investments. In addition to that, we have also cross-border or multi-country projects, as I mentioned, that would really benefit the European single market. Here, just to stop my 5 minutes that I went a bit beyond, I'd like to say that we are continuously engaging with the member states in order to support them in presenting good plans in line with the requirements of the regulation. And also what we are asking member states to do is to engage in broad public consultations at national level, because what is very important is to create this sense and feeling of national ownership of the plan. Without the engagement of citizens and businesses in the member states, it will be very difficult for the member states to have a successful implementation of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for reminding us of all the priorities that the Commission has made clear. But like you said, it will be important that the member states will get it right. So let's hear from the industry with Christoph Steck, Telefonica. Over to you, Christoph.
Yeah, thanks very much for the invitation, first of all. And I just want to add a little bit on top of what Pilar, Maria, Teresa have mentioned, and I'm actually agreeing with many things already mentioned. But I think it's important to see the big picture here for Europe. I mean, technology has become really a kind of playground for geopolitics as well. And I think that sometimes there is a feeling in Europe that because we become somehow the referees in a big match between the United States and China, that's good enough. And we're doing regulation of the digital services and so on. And we feel that this is the right thing to do, and it is. But I think that we have to be aware that the referee will not win the match. The match is played between currently outside of Europe. And I think that we should have this objective, and therefore this debate comes really at the right point in time, to also broaden the scope and to think about how we can really create European leadership in technology, in digitalization as well. And of course, that needs to be based on our values. And actually, I would go even a step further. I think that becoming a leader in technology and digitalization will be maybe the most important issue to be able to defend our values really in the world. I think that it's important to understand that leadership is mainly kind of created by creating values. So values are defended by value. And I think that the pandemic has given us a great chance here. It has been really accelerating digitalization across Europe in a couple of weeks, like we would have seen maybe in years. And we've seen that it has been a wake-up call for many, especially smaller businesses, that they need to really kind of step up their game and digitalize and become more efficient and in using digital technologies and possibilities. From Telefonica's side, we have already a while ago asked for what we call a new digital deal for Europe to really be able to build back better our economies after this pandemic and after the economic crisis created by it. So in the end, what we ask for is a kind of joint approach, as we just heard also from the Commission and from the Parliament, to come together in a public-private cooperation and try to do this kind of step forward for Europe. Of course, for us, a key objective needs to be ultra-high-speed broadband and connectivity networks across Europe. That means fiber and 5G, to be very specific. Because that's really the basis for this kind of twin transitions, the green one and the digital one, which are, from my point of view, totally linked to each other. So we need to have really these kind of ultra high speed networks to everyone, to be honest, to be able to decarbonize and create digital innovation across Europe. And unfortunately, there comes the bad news, because Europe has been really bad over the last years in creating investments in this kind of infrastructure. We can compare it with the United States or with Asian countries, but we see that actually we are lagging here. But there are also kind of hopes and shimmers of hopes. One is Spain, for example. Spain is the leader for fiber connectivity in Europe, and it's actually just next to Japan and Korea in the world. So there are fiber networks going to 75% of households in Spain, and that's amazing. And it has been done actually not so much with subsidies and public support, but it has been done just by a change of regulation. It has been just put the focus of regulation just on opening the crucial bottlenecks, and then basically let competition do the rest. And I think that's something we should not forget. The most important thing is to get the regulatory frameworks right to attract these investments. And I would just put a highlight here on 5G. I personally believe that, for example, spectrum policies in Europe needs a profound rethink. Europe's operators have paid for 3 and 4G licenses around 150 billion over the last years. And I think that these are the 150 billions maybe missing in investments across Europe. They are in finance ministers' coffins, and that's great for the finance minister, but it's not great for people. So I think that for 5G, we should kind of consider changing spectrum policies and not go for maximizing profits, but rather for prioritizing coverage across Europe, for example. Of course, for white spots, we also will need, as it was mentioned already, some form of public-private partnerships and public subsidies. And here again, just to highlight that we have to be careful to get the full picture right again. There are already some issues with state aid appearing, and I think that's something that we have to be very careful with, that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot again by doing contradictory policies actually across Europe. And let me finish with saying that in the end, there's also a big space in innovation in technology for networks. Networks are changing a lot. In the future, we will have much more software-based networks, open platforms, much more flexible networks as well. For example, in 5G, you will be able to slice the network for specific usages of the industry. And these are all issues that will create a lot of innovation across the world, actually. And Europe should kind of, with this tradition of being a leader in connectivity and in technology for networks, should kind of be focused on that as well. Just to mention the issue of latency, a lot of people speak about 5G and the latency of the networks, and that's faster, and that's very true. But actually, this latency would only be achieved if we kind of create edge computing platforms across our European networks. That means that we will create kind of mini data centers in the network to be able to have the information as close to the customer as possible. It will not be created by centralized huge data centers. And that is, for example, a possibility for Europe because we have a tradition of decentralized infrastructures. We have telecom operators that can do these things. And I would kind of think about these kind of key technologies and changes also in broadband connectivity that will create a lot of innovation over the next years, and where Europe can be very well placed. Open RAN is another example, and so on. I will not go into details here. So I think that focusing on that and focusing on creating the right policy frameworks, holistic ones, could really unleash a lot of investments in networks across Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Very clear messages and a special focus on connectivity, of course, but also thanks for reminding us of the bigger picture and that this is also a digital leadership opportunity indeed. Let's bring in now Alain Dedieu with Schneider-Electric and Digital Europe. Over to you, Alain.
Thank you, Maria Rosa, and thank you, Christoph, for this very technical detail about what's next step in digitization is going to look like in Europe. Just as an introduction, I will say that I am the chair of the DMEC, which is the Digital Manufacturing Europe European Council. And we bring together important ICT players and also, I would say, traditional industrial leaders. At a time when Europe's industry is accelerating the digitization, and the Industry 4.0 that has been mentioned earlier on shows again that we are leading the world in Europe on this industry transformation. We consider DMEC as a trust partner of the European Union for the projects around industry and also to move this segment to the next level of efficiency and leadership. And as such, we focus on areas like industrial data and new businesses, sustainability, innovation, and of course, standardization. Actually, data in industry application has been around for quite a long time. We have been through the automation wave for the last decades, what we call the OT. However, recently, thanks to the growing usage of ICT technologies, being communication, also computing in the industry, we have seen a huge rise of connected devices. Actually, we see in the next future trillions of devices to be connected, actually much more than people around the world. And with the support of the new artificial intelligence system, we may use data to give more insights and more informations to be more efficient, more sustainable, and more resilient in the industry business. Actually, data is a critical part of the IP of the companies and the competitiveness of these companies. And as such, the environment or the data usage for industry is kind of specific. And I would just mention around rules, regulations, but also on cybersecurity. And we have quite recently some examples that put this issue on top of the agenda of most of the CEOs around Europe and the world. To go back to what's the transformation of the industry in Europe is going to look like, I would emphasize first that in the industry, more and more sustainability is a key concern. And I would say that sustainability is not anymore an option for the industry anymore. It goes along with efficiency, and most of the industry players are taking commitments for sustainability, and as far as digital, we consider that digital is going to be a key enabler of this combination of competitiveness and sustainability nexus, maximizing, of course, the impact on the recovery fund in order to drive the combined Green Deal and digitization programs all together. In sustainability, we are not anymore in the questioning phase, but we need the KPIs, long-term KPIs on digital to monitor the progress of the digital transformation. The 20% share of the recovery fund for digital, for example, cannot be turned into a box-ticking exercise. You know, if I quote some member of the EC, this is not a stimulus, this is an investment. So the EC must urge the national governments to invest ambitiously, ensure that they deliver the commitment and they deliver the results and the return on investment of this digital transformation. As such, in the Digital Manufacturing Europe Council, we are providing concrete examples in order to drive those funds towards this dual objective of digitization and sustainability. For example, we issue a white paper on the water segment, which I know quite well, where for quite limited investment between 500K to 1 million euro on the unification of the digital platform, collecting all the fragmented operations on the water, wastewater treatment plants, we could have an ROI in less than 2 years. And by the way, cut by 30% the energy, and also improve the circularity of the water by reducing the leakage and reducing what some people are saying, calling them the water footprint now. But this is a guide to the national officials for their national recovery plans, and this is just an example. Otherwise, as far as industrial data, many businesses are still struggling in industry in Europe around the data because we are not getting the right incentive to use at scale the industrial data in order to drive new economy, but also new services, and as a result, new jobs. Actually, because of lack of visibility, lack of guidance on liability, on security, the industry as a whole is not engaging that quickly in the digitization. And I would say, to be honest, that industry is not a front runner in this kind of transformation. But we need from Europe, from the EC, to be more active, to reduce those fears, to show the value of the B2B database business model, but also to bring around governance and regulations and rules to build a trusted environment. And our contribution to the Gaia-X initiative in Europe is around this building of the trust environment. As soon as the environment is clear, the data ownership, the data liability is clear, I would say that we will be able then to scale up for a more innovative ecosystem where, of course, we need the SMEs. The large companies cannot do everything. And we have to build this ecosystem based on data science competencies that we may lack going forward. And as a conclusion, I think that I would say in order to embrace digital transformation and really leverage both the digitization and the sustainability, we have really much to think about the strategy around autonomy and resilience in Europe. In the global industry business, we want resilience, but through open markets, diversification of supply chain, and fair competition, not protectionism. And as such, we support that Europe boosts resilience and this competitiveness in critical technology in Europe to bring this area of making Europe then an attractive place to do business and to bring technology in an open economy that will be for the best of the private-public partnership and, of course, for the business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alain, for sharing the views of a more traditional industry sector and tell us about the challenges of the digital transformation of the traditional industry. But also thank you for bringing in the idea of sustainability as not an option in the picture. Now, let's welcome Vera Demary with the German Institute for Economic Research. And Vera, over to you.
Thank you very much, Maria Rosa. It's a pleasure for me to be here today and participate in this discussion on the very important subject of how to go forward and enable a more digital European economy. I'm a German economist working mostly on the German economy, but I'm confident that my research insights into the state of digitalization of German companies will allow for some helpful insights for other EU countries and the overall picture as well. So I'm going to come at this from the data side. We conducted a quantitative analysis of the state of digitalization of German companies late last year, using a large number of indicators and resulting in an index for German companies. Without going into much detail, I would just like to showcase the three results that I think are most relevant for today's discussion. The first one is that SMEs lag behind in digitalization, and a couple of the speakers before me already pointed this out. In our index, large companies with at least 250 employees reach an index value that is more than double than that of small companies with up to 50 employees. So this might be a question of resources on the part of the small companies. This might be a question of a lack of support, but we see this result across most of the indicators that we used in the index. So considering for Germany that SMEs are make up the large majority of companies, there is an urgent need to help them catch up. And this is very likely to be similar in other EU countries. The second result that I would like to talk about is that there are large regional disparities in the digitalization of companies in Germany. These manifest themselves on the level of larger regions. So in Germany, this would be north versus south versus east versus west. For example, the south of Germany reaches a 12% higher index value than any other region. So we have disparities there. But also the disparities show on a micro level of types of regions. So metropolitan areas, agglomerations, outperform low-density rural areas by far. While this is not a surprising result, it needs to be addressed. The third point, and this has been talked about to a great extent today, is that digital infrastructure is still an issue. It's still, for German companies, the main problem. We asked companies in a survey to address the relevance of different influential factors for the digitalization of their business. Among these factors were the accessibilities of digital competencies, the digitalization of processes, the existence of innovation capabilities, as well as the legal framework, for example. Among 10 such influential factors, digital infrastructure was allocated by far the greatest relevance. So it is a relevant factor, and at least for Germany, it still contributes largely to the slow dynamic of digitalization of industry and of companies overall. So this is another area that we should focus on looking forward and looking on where to invest. So overall, what can we learn from these results from German economic research? It's a German perspective, but it still holds for other EU countries, I think. And investment that aims to foster digitalization should focus on SMEs, independent of the sectors of the economy that they're in. It should help them catch up because digitalization works a network, and a network can only be as strong as its weakest link. And we cannot allow this to happen and allow this to be the small companies that carry a lot of the European economies. Then we need to reduce the regional disparities, and this goes hand in hand with digital infrastructure, because this is the backbone of digitalization, and we cannot allow white spots, as we heard about earlier, especially with respect to the development and implementation of 5G networks and prospectively also 6G. Thank you. That's it from me. I'm happy to take the question in the Q&A session.